Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Homeland Season 4, Episode 8, Halfway to a Donut. Jenna Busch, Alonso Duralde. Let's have a look.
Conning wants for Saul. Prisoner exchange. Don't do it.
How did I get here?
You're in quite a state.
Why were your men following me? What happened? We have a breach.
They hate us. All they want is to stab us in the back.
They know where Saul is.
If he's hurt, all bets are off.
Shit goes down in this episode.
So much shit. I have to say this. I've said it before, but I really love this season. I really do.
It is back for sure. No question.
Totally. Although I have to say, I'm a little surprised that the drug thing was fixed so quickly.
Yeah, I know. That seemed like it would have been a longer thing, but I think maybe they were also worried about like that would be too much of, like I've always been sort of calling that the dynasty subplot.
Yeah.
So it might have been a little much for this show, but here's a weird takeaway for me. The show is all but directly implying that negotiating with the Pakistani government and negotiating with terrorists is the same thing.
Yeah, that was sort of interesting.
How do we feel about that? How does Pakistan feel about that? I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the situation to say they're right or wrong, but it's kind of a bold assertion for a television program to make.
Yeah, it really was, and that we are very, very willing to negotiate with them.
Well, sure.
Because it seemed to me like, all right, so you've got one guy who everyone pretty much knows would say, no, kill me before you have this all happen.
Right.
And all of these terrible terrorists, but sure, we'll totally do an exchange. I don't know. Don't we not negotiate with
it's weird. I mean, because I say the one thing that kind of bugged me about this episode was I was very pro Carrie calling for the airstrike.
Right.
Even if it meant killing Saul.
Yeah.
Because it was what Saul would have wanted, and it wasn't just about her being upset that they killed Life of Pi guy.
Right.
And now it turns out, no, apparently she was just upset about them killing Life of Pi guy, because when it comes down to just Saul, she'll let him take him back.
Yeah, it was really, really strange. And I have to say, Tasneem, because I looked up her name, it's Tasneem. Tasneem has a terrible poker face. Terrible poker face. Like, are you negotiating? She's like, I just ate a canary. Really?
She is, yeah, and also that her note drop to Duck was easily spottable from across the room too. Maybe you're not the best at this. I mean, you've got some, you bring a lot to the table. Don't get me wrong, but some of the niceties could be ironed out a tad.
Yeah, and I love her, by the way. I think she's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
If Ben were here, he would requisitely say something about her being the sexiest spy in the world.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But yeah, it was the whole negotiation thing was very odd to me. It was really like, and I mean, there are definitely things in each season, as much as I love the show, that are a little off to me. Just like Brody being on his cell phone all the time and talking about things that maybe, if someone's bugging his phone and they would bug his phone, might have heard, or like people can hear you down the hall and things like so.
Sure.
So I mean, I'm willing to suspension of disbelief and all of that this is the way.
Much less like you're Al Qaeda and you have an asset who's in the halls of Congress. Maybe send somebody else to turn off the vice president's pacemaker.
Right. And yeah, and the other thing that was weird is like, well, they've messed with my drugs. I wonder who it is. We have a leak. Maybe fingerprint the room. I don't know. There are ways to investigate these things.
Because Duck is not wearing gloves, as I recall. So yeah,
that actually bothered me when he did it the first
time. You're right.
Like,
I didn't even notice, but now that you mentioned, that seems. But well, obviously he knew that nobody was going to fingerprint the place.
Like government agency. Like you should, you investigate things.
Sure.
Like, but no one thought, hey, what we should totally do is check, I don't know, hallway cameras or.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Don't they have those too?
You're outthinking me and the writers apparently. So.
No, and again, I do want to say, like, I loved the season, and when the episode ended, I was like, no, stop. And then I was really like that first season. I couldn't stop watching.
What I definitely will give this show credit for, and and obviously it's part of a larger scope that's happening especially with cable dramas, but for this show specifically, I was not entirely sure that Saul Berenson wasn't going to just die in this episode.
I kind of thought that he was.
Yeah, like that's the cool thing that we've gotten out of, people talk about Game of Thrones, all these other shows that have kind of made it like characters die all the time. That's a good thing, because part of what makes TV stale is the idea of, well, we know this star and this star and this star aren't going to die, I mean, like, for the Hannibal season finale, like, who's coming back from that? We don't know.
Yeah. No, I actually really like that too, and so it raised the stakes so much with him. Was when he picked up that nail, because when they showed the nail, which I thought was a little heavy-handed, but when he picked up the nail, I was like, is he going to slash his own wrists? Is he going to attack somebody? Didn't know. And that was really cool, and I really did wonder if, like, when he had that gun up, I'm like, oh, Saul, no, don't do it, Saul. But it would have made perfect sense if he did.
Totally,
I'm kind of surprised he didn't.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that Carrie very skillfully talked him off that ledge.
Yeah.
For for whatever reasons, but again, it did feel like a letdown, because I thought that because it now retroactively makes that first thing about her broken heart.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that bugs me. But the show is always kind of pulling new things out of its hat, so I'm not necessarily going to like write off this interpretation of what Carrie's up to, because there's always, you find out later, the secondary and tertiary, motivations and whatever else. So,
well, speaking of her broken heart, the Asar Khan. That whole thing from last week, and it was very interesting, because like it's one of the things I think the show does well is that you have, and one side isn't all bad and one side isn't all good. I mean, we're rooting for a lead character who tried to drown a baby. So, there's that.
You guys bring that up every week. I mean, she did it one time.
I know, only one time. You shouldn't be judged by that. But I mean, she's done some pretty crazy things.
Sure, no question.
And so you don't have good guys that much on the good side or the bad side. And then so you've got Asar Khan, and we don't know. I mean, he may be good. There may be a rivalry with Tasneem.
Right.
But he gives her some crap. He gives her some crap, and then reveals who the leak is, which is another thing I didn't think was going to happen that quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think if they're not going to milk that for suspense, then clearly they're barreling towards something else, which ideally will be something interesting. But yeah, no, I thought those scenes were really cool, and it's funny because there was a the idea of him being compassionate to her and her not being able to buy that he doesn't have some ulterior motive. There was a scene like that on Newsroom last night where Maggie decides not to use a story that she could ethically use, even though she was overhearing somebody else's conversation, and she thinks about it and decides not to, and the other guy keeps offering her this other story in return. She's like, no, really, I'm not running the story. Like he won't believe that she's actually going to do the right thing,
Yeah, I weirdly was catching up on Good Wife last night, and the same thing. There was a thing like, I'm not running. Yeah. So, but I like the way they played it, and I actually do like that. Unlike some shows, that it doesn't. Every little thing that happens isn't completely drawn out.
Right.
So even though I was sort of surprised that the drug thing wrapped up so quick, I'm not upset about it.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think in the grander scheme of things, it's sort of like a chess move, and then we just move on to whatever the next one is, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So
I'm going to be very upset when the season's over, because they're going to cliffhang us.
Probably, yeah, because they've already announced they're coming back for season 5, and this has been a really good one, and they have managed to have like interesting arcs going throughout, but also little kind of short bursts of cool stuff happening too. So we will be back next week to see where they take us next.
I want a donut.